Hi, everyone. Welcome to our People Plus Places, Judson Studios and the Architecture of Light. I'm Adrian Scott Fine, President and CEO for the Los Angeles Conservancy. Thank you all for joining us here today. The Conservancy's People Plus Places series is all about people-focused heritage conservation efforts and us sharing their stories. Increasingly, we're working to offer these programs like today on a monthly basis, so feel free to reach out to share an idea with us. If you'd like to take part in a future People Plus Places, we certainly would welcome that and encourage you to engage with us on that. So with that in mind, I'm going to stop sharing and start by saying a little bit about why we're here today. And it's all about Judson Studios. Judson Studios is a legacy business. So whether we're talking about it as a legacy business or its architecture or the artists and craftsmanship, it's really about the story of the place, the family, and its art. And it has had a lasting impression in terms of not just in Los Angeles or not just across the US, but internationally in terms of its reach. So we're really happy to be able to showcase Judson Studios and what they've done. This includes the place that helped launch the LA Conservancy. So their work was also integral in terms of the LA Central Library. Anyone who's ever been there and has looked up at the ceiling and seen that stunningly beautiful globe chandelier that was built or constructed in 1921, also Judson Studios. So their reach is certainly very far. And so we're happy to kind of show a little bit of a glimpse of Judson Studios' story, but we also encourage you to check out the recent book that was produced by the company called Judson Innovation in Stained Glass. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well a little bit later. But for the next hour, we're going to do kind of a technology challenge a little bit. We're going to be having a presentation. We're going to have an interactive tour on site at Judson Studios, and then we're also going to have a conversation and then a Q&A. So hopefully that will all go nice and smooth. But I would encourage you to ask questions. Feel free to put them in the Q&A box anytime during the program today. We'll hopefully get to all the questions that you have and be able to make sure this is interactive as possible for you all. But let me start by introducing our speaker today. So please go ahead and join us. This is David Judson. He is a fifth generation president and owner of Judson Studios. In brief, he is also a past president of the Stained Glass Association of America. He's a frequent lecturer. He gives tours all the time, including just before this at the site. He has degrees in Spanish literature and international relations and lives in Pasadena with his family. So welcome, David. I'm happy to have you here. And there he is.
Thank you, Adrian.
Sure. And one of the questions, no, I'm glad you're here. One of the questions I think maybe you can interweave into some of the conversation today is how somebody with degrees in Spanish literature and international relations made his way into what you do today, and how do you use those skill sets in terms of what you do?
Yeah, great question. And that's, I was on a different path, I have to say. When I was younger, I was interested in a lot of different things and grew up kind of wanting to be involved with the studio. And then as I hit my teenage college years, it was the last thing I wanted to do. So, the Spanish literature was not where I started my route. I was original political science. And then I did a year abroad in Madrid, Spain, and then wanted to stay. And so it was very convenient. The state school system at that time had equivalencies where I could switch my major from poli-sci to Spanish to stay in Madrid another year. So I loved Madrid. I loved living abroad. And so that was kind of a very, I got to spend a lot of time in the Prado and studying art and literature. Just kind of was a period of my life that I feel creatively has really helped me over the years. So the international relations and diplomacy was my second love at that time. And I think that's really helped me in terms of negotiating and, maneuvering a lot of things. I think a master's degree, any kind of graduate work is really about learning a vocabulary and learning how to work within that vocabulary. And I think that's really served me over the years. I never studied business, but this is a business. And so it's kind of like this balance of business and design and creativity, and trying to bring those two together, which they don't always coexist well. So having to negotiate that, I think, has been one of the challenges over the years. So, but happy to be here. Thank you so much for the Conservancy for having me. We are kind of challenging our limits of technology. So I do have a slide presentation I'd like to share, and I will move very quickly through that. And then, as you mentioned, we'll do a quick studio tour. I'm here at the studio, our original location, and we'll go do a quick walkthrough there. And then if we have time for a little Q&A, it would be great. Happy to answer any questions or anything like that. So I'll switch to my lecture here. And can you see my slide there?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So I have a lot of slides and I have very little time. So I'm going to move very quickly through these slides, and because I do want to do the walk through the tour. And you know, being such a visual kind of business and such, I love to you know, share slides. So I'm going to move quickly. So I apologize for that, but I love sharing kind of so many images, and it's a bit of a way to kind of navigate through the history of Judson and the kind of evolution of the company and the work that we've done over the years. So I like to start with my slide here. A brief history. So we'll do a brief history of Judson and the arts and crafts movement here in Southern California, which we're, you know, kind of rooted in. I'll talk a little bit about our preservation in stained glass, since this is a kind of conservation preservation group. I like to talk about the process and some of the projects that we've done. Again, I have just a couple of case studies that I'd like to show, and they're fairly large projects. Not all of our projects are large. We do very small projects as well, but these are kind of the ones that I like to kind of walk through. And then kind of today, what's happening today, a little bit of the evolution of what I think stained glass is and what we're doing, and kind of how things evolve over time. You know, and that was one of the things of working through the book. There's really getting an understanding of how, as a fifth generation Judson, you know, we remain pertinent today and not just kind of resting on laurels, and how do we push the movement and respect our tradition and that kind of thing. So that's all kind of part of the story. So it starts with William Lee Judson, who's my great-great-grandfather, came to Los Angeles in 1893 from the World's Fair in Chicago. He was a painter, a plein air painter, and we attribute this founding of the company to him, even though it's really his sons who start the company. But he came, like so many Americans, was a veteran of the Civil War, fought on the side of the North, fought with General Grant down to Tennessee when Grant went then to Washington, but he signed up with the Civil War, the side of the North in Illinois, and actually marched in Grant's regiment, and survived the Civil War, went back to Canada. He was born in England in 1842, came to Brooklyn in 1852, is 10 years old. His family farmed in Brooklyn, if you can imagine, and then settled in Canada. And he grew up in Canada till he was 18 when the Civil War broke out. He went back to Canada after the war. He went to France and studied in France, and really kind of committed to being a painter, an artist. He had 6 children. His wife died of complications of the last child, unfortunately. So he constantly was struggling to kind of keep his family. And I think that's part of the story of kind of as a survivor and why stained glass. You know, one was to be creative and do something professionally that was practical as well as beautiful. And coming out of England, he was born outside of Manchester, England during the Industrial Revolution. And that's, I think, why his family left, was just kind of this oppressiveness of the Industrial Revolution. So I kind of attribute that to his philosophies of the arts and crafts movement that he adopted as a young child, and his experiences. When he came to California in 1893, he fell in love. He wrote his family immediately and said, "This is the last place I'm going to live," after being, you know, traveling throughout the world painting, but he found the Arroyo Seco, and the Arroyo Seco, like so many artists that settled along the banks of the Arroyo Seco, was beautiful because of the light, right, and the softness of the light. And so a lot of these are studies from around Southern California that he traveled around with his easel and just captured. This is the Arroyo Seco looking north. The Rose Bowl would be over that hill on the right. We think that's the original Holly Street Bridge. And you can see the little home there on the left-hand side as well. What the Arroyo and kind of LA was like when he came is just amazing. He settled on the Arroyo. This is his house on the left-hand side. And this is Garvanza or Highland Park, again, looking north towards the San Gabriels. And it was a good thoroughfare, right? And still is, so to a certain extent. This is the red line. You see the Santa Fe behind as well. So the railroads came through this area. That where this picture's taken, you're actually almost standing on our property at the studio looking northeast. Now, unfortunately, is the 110 freeway. But he said he couldn't afford to live in Pasadena, and downtown LA was for the business, a lot of the business folks. So Garvanza Highland Park was kind of the perfect location in between. And shortly after he was here, he started teaching, and he was one of the few people in the city of LA at this time who could teach at the university level. And he was also a Methodist, so that made him a great candidate for USC, which was the Fighting Methodists at that time, if you remember. And so he built this building, and the building, the structure, the property that we're on now, this building was built in 1899, 1900, and then burnt down in 1910. So it's a little bit different now, which I'll show you. This is a shot of the El Rodeo, USC's El Rodeo in 1899. You can see him on the right-hand side there. This is how it started. Just a handful, mostly women, studying the fine arts. And then William Lees also founded the Arroyo Guild of Fellow Crafters, which was, basically kind of the Southern California answer to what Gustav Stickley was doing in New York. And so they opened up here on this property. They had festivities with the students of USC, as well as this guild of crafters. And they published this Arroyo Craftsman, which is, like the Craftsman. And but they didn't get past volume 1, number 1. This is the first and only. So they were much better craftspeople than publishers. As I mentioned, the building burnt down in 1910, was rebuilt. This is designed with Train & Williams. So if you know Angel's Flight and some other kind of Train & Williams did some other commercial and large arts and crafts buildings throughout the city. They were the guild architects, and friends with William Lees. So they designed the building after the fire. And it still remained home to the Arroyo Guild. We still have the We Can. I'll show you this actually in a moment on our tour. And then, as you can see, the school kind of grew, and again, primarily women studying, but this is in front of the building after the fire. So that was an important part of our legacy and history. William Lees also had his sons start this company in stained glass. They came out in 1895, worked for another glazer, and then in 1897 started what was called the Colonial Art Glass Company, which was their first kind of go at the stained glass. And this is a shot of, that's my great-great-grandfather there with that mustache in the middle, and his 2 brothers in front of the school actually before the fire. So they started downtown. You can see here's one of their cards down in the Metropolitan Building. That's became a sales office when they were down there until 1921, when USC centralized its campus. Judson moved here, and the School of Fine Arts moved down to the main campus. Our earliest example of work, I found this actually the Pasadena Museum of History brought these photos to our attention. We had no idea. Phineas, as you know, if you know the Pasadena Museum is her old home. This was her first home that she built on Orange Grove Boulevard. So if you know Pasadena, this house on Orange Grove Boulevard must have been something else. This house burnt down, but is no longer there. But this was the first commission. You can see the window up at the top there. And here's a shot of it directly in. And so this is 1897. We have some of the correspondence between the architect and Mrs. Phineas and Judson about this, but this kind of idea of an Islamic motif as our first project, one of our earliest projects, is very interesting. And of course, involved with the arts and crafts community. This is the Abbey San Encino, which is a neighbor of ours. And this window was made for Clyde Brown. You see the CB initials there in the bottom right. He was a printer. This window was done from what I know, from in exchange for printing for promotional material for Judson Studios, and the window's still there, amazingly enough. Judson did a lot of what we call American art glass movement, so a lot of Tiffany-esque type designs. A lot of craftspeople from Tiffany ended up coming out to LA and working for Judson. This was at Inglewood Mausoleum, 1914. And these are really spectacular. If you haven't been to Inglewood Mausoleum, it's worth a visit. The stained glass, the site, the facility, it's one of the largest stained glass installations Judson ever did. And it's a great day trip if you want to go, if you haven't been there. Both the Inglewood Mausoleum and the Mausoleum of the Golden West. And of course, Natural History Museum. And this window is also 1914. And we've restored this as well in the early 2000s. Central Library, which is a 5-foot dome. Amazingly, that does not look 5 feet, but that's a 5-foot dome. So I give you a sense of the scale. That's one of my favorite installations in Los Angeles. And the metalwork was Lee Laurie, who also did Atlas Shrugged in Rockefeller Center, if you're probably familiar with that sculpture. Goodhue, the architect. All Saints, Pasadena. I love to show this window. This is a window, again, the connection with Tiffany and Judson. Frederick Wilson was Tiffany's lead designer for several years and ended up coming to Los Angeles to work for Judson. And again, a strong connection with the arts and crafts movement. I love this connection with Burne-Jones, one of my favorite artists. I think a strong influence on this window, also at All Saints. And of course, Frank Lloyd Wright. We've done the windows both at the Hollyhock and the Ennis houses. And restoration, actually, that skylight right now we're working on, it's actually in our shop right now. You can just see the corner of it up on the ceiling there. And some water leakage, and that's the area. If you've seen it since they've redone it, this space looks spectacular, but they had to do a lot of work in the ceilings there. Dining room, one of my favorite places in the house. And then the Ennis, which is a little bit of a different story. We found that the Ennises had a lot of influence on the house. Both Frank Lloyd Wright and his son were fired from this project. And so we think Judson probably worked with Mrs. Ennis. This is some designs that were actually seen in a catalog out of Chicago and adapted. So there's still a lot of kind of controversy about how much Frank Lloyd Wright input Frank Lloyd Wright had on these window designs, because he did not originally design stained glass for the Ennis house, but very Frank Lloyd Wright-esque. And those working on those houses as well as restoring on those windows got us this job in 2018 at the Unity Temple. All of these windows came out and back to California. You can see it's pulling them out there on the left, all the crates showing up at our studio, and trying to figure out where to put all of those. They were all completely redone because they had had horrible repairs over the years. And so when I say redone, meaning they were taken apart, cleaned, and then we replaced all of the zinc on the panels. So this is all the zinc. Frank Lloyd Wright liked zinc as opposed to lead, because zinc was a very stiff metal that he didn't want to use support bars on. And because his designs were so clean and geometric, he could use zinc because it had a nice strict line. But zinc fails as easily as lead, and can sometimes be worse because once it cracks, it starts leaking pretty drastically. So we had to be very careful about how we waterproofed them and sealed them, because being in Chicago and the weather, it was really important that these windows, again, never leaked, never leaked again. We worked on some lights in the house. There was several dozen lights that had to be reproduced and reset. And we were just honored to be a part of this project. The place looks spectacular. It's won several awards. If you haven't been since they've restored it, it's worth the trip if you're in the Chicago area, because it looks spectacular. They did an amazing job of the whole place. All the finishes, everything's really spectacular. That's a great shot of the windows from the exterior there. We're also restoring this, the Air Force Academy Chapel. This was a project of my grandfather's in Colorado Springs. They're actually still working on it. And it was 1960. The buildings leaked from day one, and so they've completely taken it, de-skinned it, taken it apart, re-engineered all of the drainage systems, and they're getting ready to kind of actually we'll reinstall the windows, and we just found out probably 26 into 27. So this has gone a lot longer than they expected, but this is what it looked like when we were working on it. They had to encase it because of the winds coming off. If you've ever been to Colorado Springs, and the Air Force Academy campus, it's very windy and kind of exposed to the elements. But we had a major job. It was like 125 feet getting all of these windows out, taking them out, bringing them back, documenting them, cleaning them. They were basically in good shape. This is faceted glass, which is a little bit different from leaded glass, but you can see all of the black gook and all the silicone and all the sealants that were applied over the years. And this is us removing all of that and having to do it in containment because of the asbestos had been found. And this is, yeah, I show this a photo because stained glass isn't all beauty and color, and it's a little bit of a sausage factory making stained glass windows, and it can be a very dirty job. But we have a great crew here. Last restoration job I'll show you. This is the dome in Missouri at Jefferson City, and we actually recently finished this. It's installed now. The scaffolding has not come down yet. But they're getting ready for the inauguration in January. So everything's kind of moving quickly, and they wanted us out of there so that they could get in and get all their other finishes done in place. But this was a real monster of a project, getting all these panels down to the ground. It's a beautiful window out of New York in the early teens, and all of this came to the studio, was completely cleaned, taken apart, and re-leaded. And we had to change quite a bit on it structurally because of the size and the heat. And you can see there's a lot of damage to this. I'll show you in a second kind of what happened. Is that over time, the structures, these panels were made so big, they were sagging. And so someone came in and drilled these new bars, and they actually just drilled these things all the way just through the windows. And so the glass was really damaged because of this kind of invasive repair, so to speak, of adding new structure. And so a lot of engineering, we did a lot of work with engineers to kind of get through a lot of these, figure out what the problem was and how we could relieve the sagging. And there you can see all that yellow, and that one red spot there is all out of plane, basically, the glass sagging down. And so we work with them to re-engineer a frame that would sit underneath the window instead of on top of it, and get a lot of the weight off of the panels, which should be good. But here you can see kind of a before and after. And so they're spectacular. I can't wait to see this myself. I haven't really seen it. You can see all these little lines that we had to reintroduce to salvage the glass. We use copper foil instead of lead to get as small of a line as possible to repair those pieces and salvage them. So we didn't have to replace them. And then also this just great birds that you can't see. Like, you look at that thing, it's like, where are these birds? All these details in this window that are really spectacular. Okay, so some of the contemporary work. This is a project we did in 2017. We were asked to compete for this project. It was an international search. We were lucky to find this to win the award. And this took us about 4 years to make this window, and it's about the size of a basketball court. And this was introduced fusing into our repertoire, where we worked with an artist to bring in the technique of fusing, which I won't get into too much today, but it's basically being able to use glasses and frit that you can put in a kiln and fuse together to create different effects. This was the head of Christ and the eyes that you can see. Just one piece of glass, all of these elements we can do. And so once we got into this, we really pushed to start working with artists outside. And so we started working with contemporary artists. Muralists, street painters were one of the first to really kind of love working with us and collaborating with us. It's David Flores. You might have his work around town. Amir Falla, also a local artist, as we've done several public art projects with. And so we really wanted to push the vocabulary of stained glass into the contemporary art world and working with contemporary artists. This is Sarah Kane, who's a abstract painter also, so quite a bit. James Jean, this is somebody we worked pretty closely with, also LA artist. Several collaborations with him. And one of the big ones that we're working on right now is the pagoda. And the pagoda is this kind of massive kind of three-dimensional structure that we're building that'll be about 18 feet wide by 15 feet high. You'll be able to walk inside of it. And so we've gotten a huge team together to build this structure. And it's super complicated, but we're very excited about it. And we think it's really kind of pushing not only the technology side, but with glass, but what we can do artistically and working with painters. Started as a drawing, was architecturally drawn to figure out the structural, because this has to be engineered to carry the structure. See the larger pieces. And so what we did is we figured out a way to create transitions of color in the glass by using ground up glass. It's almost like sand, but it's ground up glass that a company, Bullseye, makes. And so by using that, we could create transitions of color. And rather than say painting or just picking a sheet of glass, then we'd mark it, cut it with a water jet to get these really precise images and sizes, and then fuse it together. So all these cut pieces are puzzled together, put in a kiln that you see here. This is a kiln, and then we cap it with another clear piece of glass to then get these panels. And then what we'll do is we'll create the foreground figures that will lay on top. So here's these fantastical, he's came out of the comic world, illustration world. And so this is the foreground elements that'll go on that background that I just showed you. But these hands will be cut with a water jet to get exactly the way we want them. But we've created these transitions of color with the frit, and then we can piece it together even with black glass. So if you see that those black lines, that's glass. And that glass can be cut precisely the way we want it. And then we can fuse it together. So here you see those two hands actually on top of the background. And you can see it kind of creating a new kind of direction of where we're going. So that's just a quick outline. I'm sorry, I kind of went over a little bit on my talk, but I just wanted to show you kind of the diversity and kind of the range of stained glass and what we're doing today and kind of what I think the future holds. And, I think that working with artists, I've done a lot of research on like fine artists that worked in stained glass, and these are some names that you probably recognize that have done work in stained glass. And so we hope to kind of promote that. Even 2019, David Hockney did the Queen's window at Westminster Abbey. We tried to get him to make it here in LA, and they didn't go for it. But it's a very interesting window, but I think if we could have fused it for him, it would have been really spectacular. And, this is what I say is now the California version. This is at Grace Cathedral, a fused window done by Narcissus Quagliata, who got us into fusing. And, I think having pushed stained glass into very traditional here in LA, now we're trying to make it kind of very cutting edge. And I think that's kind of deserving of LA and what we do. And so trying to make an old craft kind of new and kind of continue with the tradition and the new world. So that's our quick slide presentation, and I appreciate your attention. And I think we'll shift now to the walking tour. Yeah, Adrian?
Yeah. So while David is literally making his way to another part of the space and to a different form of technology for the tour, I'll fill some time here. But one thing I'm going to put into the chat, and you saw it on David's last screen, is the book Judson Innovation Stained Glass. So encourage you guys to check it out. It's a great publication. It came out right around COVID. So, like a lot of us, we were not focused on what was happening. So you may have missed it at that time, but please check it out. And again, thank you, David, for the kind of a very, very quick whirlwind tour of from start to where they are today as a legacy business doing, amazing work in glass. And one of the questions I'd had for David, and I hope we can get into it in the conversation, is there are lots of other stained glass or decorative glass companies that were in business at the same time as when Judson started, and Tiffany and others, But what's their secret? How did they survive where others didn't in terms of a legacy business? And I think one of those things is something that David already shared with the group, is a little bit of how they're always innovating, trying new technology, new techniques. Everything he's talking about, the fused glass, is amazing. And actually to see it in person, some of the work that they're doing on the site, which is a whole other piece of this, that there is an opportunity to have on-site tours as well. And the last thing I would share, just so that you all know, to put it in context, that David started with a little bit about the arts and crafts movement. Certainly Judson and the Arroyo Seco, Arroyo, Valley with plein air painting is part of Southern California's contribution to that movement. But if you put it in larger context, it's a movement that started in Britain, with William Morris and others. And then, we have our East Coast variation of that in terms of Gustav Stickley, the Craftsman, and everything that was happening there. And this is more of the West Coast version, but they all fit together in terms of ideals and design and aesthetics and decorative arts that were all coming together around this, in terms of advancing, something that was very innovative at that time and still is today when you look at the contributions that came from that. So let me check in with David and see if he's with us yet.
Yeah, Adrian, can you let me enable my camera?
Oh, I thought you had that before, so something must have changed. Are you able to do it now?
Let me see.
Okay. You're sideways, but we'll get you right ways shortly here. And again, while David's doing that, I again encourage you to put your questions in. I see that some of you have already done those. So go ahead and put those in. Appreciate that. Another question someone asked, and just so that you know, we are recording this. We will be making this available on our YouTube channel. So we'll have that out before the end of the week so that everybody that's registered will get a link to that. And David's working on getting right side. Almost there.
Oh, you know what? Because we want to clear it right up.
You're definitely seeing the sausage being made.
Yeah.
In terms of our technology gods and having it all work. But part of what we wanted to do is be able to have David walk you around the site a little bit for those that haven't been there or haven't been there yet, or are joining us remotely, so that you can see a little bit of it in actions. So. And I see other people are asking questions about other contributions by Judson Studios. We will try to get to those in terms of questions about which buildings. I see somebody's asking about, or Anne's asking about Wilshire Boulevard Temple windows and some of the windows there, as well as others. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about some of those as well.
There we go. All right, I think we got it.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Yeah, you're sideways though.
Great.
I'm sideways.
You're sideways. Now you're straight.
Okay, got it. All right.
Go to it.
So we're in the studio here. I wanted to kind of share real quickly some of the sketches from our archives. So this is we just turned 126 actually this year. So last year we celebrated our 125th year, and we pulled out some of the archives, which we have, thousands of sketches, as you can imagine, of stained glass windows that we'll have in our archives here in LA. And so just kind of recognizing our history and tradition. And so we do everything now digitally. So all of these are now done on the computer, and our archives have turned into digital archives. And we'll go through here. And this is our cutting room. So this is where we keep samples of all our different colored glass that we keep in stock. And so pretty much everything we do is custom. And so what we do is we create a sketch. So for example, over here, you can see some simple side lights. So there's a couple of side lights here with a door panel, a couple of door panels. And so these have been run by the client. We selected all the colors here. So this is our palette of colors that we'll be using for this project. And then you see the full-size drawing actually laid out here. So this is actually a really large panel, bigger than we like to make them. But this is kind of how we'll work in assembling all of this. And so once all the glass is cut, we tray it up like you see here. This is a tray of cut glass. And so all of this glass is moved around on these trays through the studio. And this is a traditional project that will be painted. So we'll send this to our glass painters, and our glass painters will actually paint on these. They're not painting here, they're at our other studios, so I won't show you that today. But painting is basically like a vitreous paint, which is ground up glass and different minerals mixed with a oil or water medium. It's painted on the surface of the glass and then fired in. So it actually becomes permanent and part of the glass itself. And so then once it's fired, then we'll glaze in the glazing. Here you can see another residence we're working on. This is kind of a very green and green inspired design for residents. Again, 2 side lights and a door. Interestingly enough, we have 2 of those in the shop. And the glass has been cut. This is a glass that we had custom made to reproduce kind of old iridescence. Can you see the iridescence on there? There. And so we had one of our vendors make these iridized sheets for us to kind of recreate more arts and crafts style windows. And so once this is all cut, which you can see it's just about ready to go, then we'll move it into the glazing room and it'll be leaded together. So the glass is cut. Sorry, one last thing before we move out of the cutting room is that you see these patterns. And these patterns are used to actually cut the glass. So we cut these with special scissors that create a little gap for the lead. So this is where the lead, the heart of the lead would fit in between pieces of glass. So we take out a little bit of area to be able to compensate for that. And then we use a glass cutter right along the edge of the paper to get the shapes of the pieces of glass. So again, the glass will be cut, and then we bring it in here. And so they'll get ready. You can see this table's getting ready to take those panels. Over here, we're doing a restoration project. So there was a damaged window at Hollywood Presbyterian Church in it's Gower. Someone had kind of vandalized the window, so we're pulling it in. We'll fix broken glass that's been lost and re-lead these panels so that we can reinstall them. This is a new project here. You can see the glazing process. So they usually start in the corner here, and then they cut different leads. You can see the different lead sizes there are. This is so that this thicker lead will fit in the frame. And then it's basically put together like a puzzle almost on the drawing that I showed you in the other room to maintain the size. It's really important that we keep the size of the panel so that it fits. And then these pieces, which you can see have been painted kind of like a hay almost, it's sitting there. And then these pieces will be glazed together. And then where one piece of lead meets another, we'll melt solder. We use a soldering iron to melt solder directly on these joints like that when it's hot. And then we'll do it on the other side as well. These nails, anybody recognizes these? These are horseshoe nails, which are great because they have the head is, you can pick them up with your fingers without killing yourself, as opposed to a flat head. It's a flat nail, so it, if it's ever used against the edge of the glass, it doesn't chip the glass. And then our tables last longer with a straight nail instead of a round one. So there's a lot of reasons, little technical things like that in the craft that are through this whole process. So anyway, when he's done glazing this, then we cement it, which I'll show you downstairs. And you can see the old sayings when this was the school are still here. No steps backwards. This one says, art is the only beautiful way of doing things, and only the best is worthwhile. So we kept these up for remembering the school and our history as a school. I'll stop in here real quickly. Kind of see this. So I mentioned all of the glass samples that you saw on the wall in there. This is where we keep all the glass. So each sample has a number, and then each bin is numbered to track the glass. A lot of this glass we don't use on a regular basis. A lot of times it's used for repairs, restoration, that kind of thing. Kind of legacy glass. Some of it we just can't part ourselves with because it's so beautiful, but may not be used anytime soon. But anyway, it's a great kind of story to see all the different types of glass that we have. Down here is the basement. This is the oldest part of the window. The oldest part of the building. And down here is where we're doing the cementing. So you can see these panels. These are from Breed Street Shul, which is we're repairing all of the windows. If you know the Breed Street Shul, it's the oldest Jewish house of worship in Los Angeles. And they're restoring the windows. We did a restoration on these windows a number of years back, but it was kind of still somewhat abandoned. And so we had to repair all the damage that the vandals had taken on it. Some of these windows became target practice, unfortunately, for rocks. So we'll be putting protective glazing in on this project. But basically what's happening right now is that we've put in a black putty or cement. We call it cement. It gets brushed with a brush underneath the flange of the lead and the glass. And basically we're trying to create a seal so that between the glass and the lead, there's no ability for water to come through. Right now, he's put down some whiting, and he'll put down a little sawdust, which you see over there, and that's soaking up any moisture, excess moisture. And then he'll start brushing it again to completely remove all of this material. Right now, he's kind of letting it dry a little bit. And that then waterproofs the panel, it helps stiffen the panel, and it patinas the lead and solder joints. So if you see the solder joints here, they're very shiny when they're done. So by using a black cement, we can patina those down so that they don't reflect, they're not reflective. And so this is the last stage before we put steel bars on the panels. And once we put steel bars on the panels, then we're ready to go ahead and install them. And our team basically does all the removal and all the installation, all the site work. Most people are not comfortable handling stained glass. So we're kind of, when we show up, we do the whole thing from start to finish. And that's it. That's kind of the tour for today. I know it's been a little rushed, and but I'm happy to answer some questions. Maybe we'll switch.
We just stay, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you stay there, David?
Yeah,
that's great. Maybe if you're able to make your way out to the front of the building too, so people can see it's a gorgeous, it's a gorgeous building. On top of it, just while he's making his way there, it is a designated historic cultural monument in the city, a very early one in terms of Highland Park Garvanza, and has been lovingly cared for. And recently there was some restoration work done on it. So David, you want to share a little bit about the building itself?
You want to share a little bit of the building?
Yeah. So let me just show you real quickly. You may have seen photos of the building before, and it was white, and we did change the color. Don't tell Lambert. Let's see if I can get it sideways here.
Now you're sideways.
Yeah, is it it didn't change, it's still sideways?
Yeah, it just went sideways on it. Now you're level again.
Okay. So as we mentioned, we kind of restored the outside. All of the shingles were in really bad repair, so we took those down, scraped them, cleaned them, and repainted. All the windows were refixed, the screens, a new roof, new downspouts and gutters. So we're doing quite a bit on the outside. A lot of this terracotta had been damaged, which we repaired, and a lot of the tracery elements had to be kind of resecured and that kind of thing. So we're in pretty good shape now on the outside. So you can see we're a working studio here. We just got a shipment of glass in.
Yeah, it's a super unique and interesting building. It's difficult to describe architecturally just simply because it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, a little bit of California. There's a little bit of Victorian elements, craftsman elements, Islamic motifs, a little bit of everything. So, but we love it, and it's a great place to work and come here every day. And yeah, not the most conducive to productivity, a lot of small rooms, but yeah, we really love it. And I hope you all, if you haven't been here, can come visit us at some point.
Yeah, no, thanks you, David. Some people have asked in the comments and questions, do you all do tours? You do tours. I put a link into your website. So like I said, this is a bad facsimile of the real experience in terms of seeing the place and seeing the work being done. Everything that David's been sharing with you all is amazing to be there in person. So if you're able to do it, definitely take them up on that offer. It's just really wonderful to be in that space. And as David was saying, it's a very much of a working studio, and that's part of the joy of being there. One question that has come up a couple of times, David, is about where do you find your artists? Is there apprenticeship? It's something in preservation, not just in LA, but nationally, we can't find craftspeople, or there aren't enough people that can do this work anymore. So I think that's one piece of the question. A part two of that is, how does an average person that has a leaded glass window find people to do this work? And is that level too small for the work that you do? Do you have recommendations about how to approach that? Because a lot of people have these not quite as exquisite stained glass windows that you're doing work on, but their front windows and things like that are now failing.
Yeah, no, great questions. In terms of the restoring, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of restoring smaller windows, we work on small projects. So you can always reach out to us. If we can't do it, we know there are some other shops too that that are good around town that can work on your windows, and hopefully you save your windows. So always try to give your windows a chance before maybe thinking about getting rid of them, because they are expensive, but they're wonderful, and they kind of add joy to our lives in a lot of different ways. So anyway, that's my pitch on stained glass. In terms of finding people, that's a very good question. It's a question we deal with consistently. Some of our people have been here 30, 40 years. Some people are just getting started. And when I first started here, it was primarily like retirement age Eastern Europeans, because they artistically knew how to design and draw realistically and for stained glass. And so I knew that had to change. And so one of the things I did was I started an art gallery and did a lot of exhibitions, not of stained glass, but just of art, to get the art community here. And we've ended up, through that kind of effort, people finding that we didn't, that maybe didn't know we existed, heard about who we were and what we did. And, we were able to find some really great young artists that are working here now. And in terms of the craft, a lot of folks come from different trades or different studios, and we bring them in and kind of train them to work as a team. We're almost 20 people here working in the studio, and getting all those people to work together, because everybody's involved with the project at some point. And so it's really important that relationship, that everybody's work affects everybody else. And so there's a lot of kind of training and kind of an unofficial apprenticeship that we have. So some of our younger guys are working with our older guys to kind of learn how to do certain things. And so that those skills are kind of passed on in a somewhat informal way, but on a day-to-day actual basis of working on projects.
Great. Couple of other questions. Many people are fascinated with some of your new work and the fused glass that you were talking about, in terms of how you're embracing new technologies or experimenting with new approaches around glass. And some have asked about the pagoda. What is the plan? Where is that going to be? I don't know if you know that answer, but if you're able to share anything on the pagoda. But also, just as a legacy business, I'm curious, is that part of the reason why you have been successful, in terms of that you are always looking about what's next in terms of the technologies, versus not just the old approaches, but also what's new. So I'd be curious about like if you could share a little bit about your philosophy around that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important to me. That's something that I've always been kind of into technology and really enjoyed technology. I guess maybe it's a reaction of coming from such a Luddite profession. But and I will say that we really didn't move into the fused glass and the kind of really pushing the technology until we mastered kind of what we felt was the traditional craft, and really understanding the history and kind of traditional aspects of stained glass that really informed our ability to push into the technology in the future. And I have a kind of a story that I constantly tell of growing up here in Los Angeles and being in a pretty much traditional studio, stained glass studio, and most of our designs were kind of known, and we're still known as a somewhat traditional studio. And I saw so many contemporary artists going to Europe, primarily Germany, to get their work done. And so that, from me, from a very young age, stuck with me. And I said, how do we address that? I mean, we're in Los Angeles. We're in the most cutting edge city in the most cutting edge state. We need to kind of figure out how do we do something new and interesting with this medium in the 21st century, and where can it go? And so it was really that project in Kansas City that pushed us as finalists with an American artist working with a German studio to push ourselves to figure out how to do a contemporary interpretation of something that also had some traditional elements. And so by winning that project, we were able to fully commit to fusing. We were the first major studio to do that. Fusing's been around since kind of the late 70s, early 80s, 1980s, which is very new in the world of stained glass, and has still not been embraced by most majority stained glass studios. But for us, and to me, because of that constant kind of looking to Europe and trying to figure out why contemporary artists were going to Germany to get their glass done, how do we change that? And so this was like the perfect solution for us on this project. And it was big enough where we could train our people. We actually built a second facility to manage that project. And that's how we ended up working with more contemporary artists, is that we now had this facility where we could do these contemporary things. We really needed to figure out how we could get artists into the studio working in glass, because it's a high bar, as you can imagine. Like, a painter doesn't necessarily who may want to work in glass, has no idea how to start, doesn't have the facilities, the know-how, everything that kind of goes with that. We wanted to completely do away with that barrier. And so that has been really our big push. And really bringing in contemporary artists pushed us to try new things and do different things very differently. And so now the technology that's gone into the pagoda is really beyond even what I could have thought that we would have done moving into fused glass. And what I love about fused glass is the purity of it, and the fact that a lot of the German studios are using colored enamels, for example, on float glass, where they're treating the surface of a sheet of glass, where we're actually manipulating the material of glass. So we're creating sheets with transitions of color with glass, as opposed to a surface treatment. And so that kind of tradition and the material and the legacy of what that is, to me, really resonated, and married that world of technology and tradition. And so the pagoda just became this perfect storm of engineers that got excited about what we were doing, architects. So we have this really amazing team that came together to kind of see this thing be built. And it's not done. We've been working on it for 4.5, almost 5 years, and really only in production in the last 1.5 years, maybe 2, because of the R&D that went into it. And James, the artist, has been self-funding it. So we've been very lucky. There's very few artists who have that ability to do that. He's a very successful, ambitious, entrepreneurial, technology-pushing artist who really pushed us into creating something for him that is really going to be spectacular. He has not sold it yet. It does not have a home yet. We hope to have it done in the first quarter of next year. And he'll be showing it around. He's has a very strong following in Asia, so it may end up in Asia. We hope it stays closer here to LA, so we hope to find a home here in LA. But we think that it'll be something that is going to hopefully change kind of the conception or what I call the preconceived notions of stained glass and what people think of stained glass. This is something we really wanted to change people's thoughts. We hope that this kind of technology leads to more things, especially architectural elements. And, you know, architects now are not as afraid of color, I don't think, as they used to be. And so I think we have some kind of ability to perhaps become, you know, public art, different things that we can kind of participate in. You know, that reminds me that in Forest Lawn right now, there's an exhibition of Narcissus Pagliata, who's the artist who really championed fusing, and we brought in, he's in his mid 80s now, we brought him in to help us with the Church of the Resurrection because he was the only kind of major stained glass artist working in fusing. And he has a major exhibition up at Forest Lawn Glendale right now in the museum. And they have a very strong tradition. If you don't know, the Hearst collection of stained glass is housed at the Forest Lawn, and some medieval pieces that are being shown with Narcissus works and showing kind of an evolution of stained glass, you know, centuries of stained glass, and also his own work of the evolution from the 1980s to today, where he was doing a lot of work where he didn't have the technology available to him in fusing, he now does. And to see that evolution, it's a great exhibition to see. So if you've never been also to the Forest Lawn Museum, it's an amazing spot. It's like the views are fantastic, the grounds are amazing, and so it's worth you can add that to your weekend trips.
Yeah, some of our attendees had mentioned that, so I would second that. Definitely check it out. It's worth seeing. We're almost at the end, but I've got a couple more questions. We're not going to get to everything. This has been a very engaged group. The more you say, the more that people have questions, David, so I think that's a good thing. One question that I think we're all wondering is there a sixth generation Judson in the works already, or what is your succession plan?
Yeah, great question. Yes, my son is working with us now, and he's you know, spending more and more time with us, and we're kind of grooming him to kind of move in. I think my daughter's also interested. She's a little bit more on the creative side. My son's a little bit more on the business side. So I keep telling him they'll be a good team to team up together and work. And also Quentin, who you know, there was a video made of the making of the window in Kansas, and Quentin's kind of a great character in that. And Quentin started working with us at, I think he was 17 or 18 years old. He's kind of in his mid-20s now. He's basically running that studio. And his mother is actually married to my brother. So we kind of count him as part of the family too, and part of the future of the studio. So so yes, yeah, we do have some folks that are willing and able and to take over.
Great. Well,
I'm almost ready too.
Yeah. We're at the hour, and like I said, we could be talking to you a lot longer. We really appreciate you tuning in with us, everybody else tuning in and being part of this. Again, encourage you to go check out their website, go on a tour, go buy the book, just go by the site, just even driving by to see it. It's really a stunningly beautiful building that I think David's right. It kind of defies architectural terms. It's got lots of things going on, but it's stunningly beautiful. So we're seeing, again, thank you, David, for being part of this and everything you guys do and all your craftspeople. We're very appreciative that you're still in business and doing this work, not just in LA, but all over the world, it seems. Again, thank you everybody for joining us, being part of this. Encourage you to join us at the Conservancy as a member if you're not already, and our upcoming programs, including Saturday's program in San Pedro. So go to our website. And again, thank you all for being here today. Appreciate it. And thanks again, David.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Adrian.